All right, it's 1 o'clock, yes. And we've been just going like from one session to the other. So I'm really happy at 1 o'clock to welcome you to this session. My name is Dr. Lesley Farmer, and I teach school librarians at Cal State University, Long Beach, and I am really honored to be able to be the moderator today. And so we have a really great variety of folks that are going to be sharing about how to create and promote graphic novels for all readers in challenging times. So there's some really important words here that we're going to be addressing today. So with that, so again, you're going to see this representation. We're going to start with Gina Bottini, and she's the program specialist for multilingual programs for the Secondary Professional Development Center in San Bernardino City's Unified School District. And she's a reading and literacy leadership specialist. And her goal is to support each student in their personal literacy journey. And I really like that concept. Her background as an educator, it includes developing reading intervention programs at the middle school level and working closely with language learners. And she's, not surprisingly, an advocate for social justice inside and outside the classroom, especially in regard to LGBTQ plus youth. I know I'm going fast, but we want to hear these folks, and there's a lot of them. Okay. So Yukiko Chavez is a library media technician for Vista Unified School District that's in this county, and she served for over a decade at 3 different middle schools across 2 public school districts. And her focus as a librarian is to create a self-welcoming hub on campus by curating all-inclusive, student-centered reading materials and maintaining an up-to-date collection of culturally relevant materials that reflect the diverse student populations that she serves. And that's a really good model for all library workers. Next we have sorry about this, Baltazar, and as he says it, he is a super cartoonist machine from the heart of Chicago.
That's right, that's correct, absolutely.
And yeah, so he's a creative force behind the Eisner. You're going to hear about a lot of awards in this group, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
You know, Eisner award-winning Itsy Bitsy Hellboy and New York Times best-selling Eisner Award, Harvey award-winning DC Comics Tiny Titans, and artist of the DC Super Pets children's series, and also co-wrote the Billy Batson and the Magic of Shazam, and Young Justice, Green Lantern, my son's big thing, artist co-writer for Epics of Superman, Family Adventures, and the New Superpowers series from DC Comics, another one of my son's favorite groups, and then recently he's become co-founder of the
Comics.
Right, Comic Shop, and co-creator of the comic book series starring Action Cat and Adventure Bug. Okay, so you get the idea of what art's like, yes.
That's a lot of stuff.
All right. And you're going to hear more about him. So Jane Tropper, I don't know, she's a really nice balance there because she's a speech language pathologist in the Chicago area. So there's Chicago rules. And she's been doing that for 10 years and currently works with preschool through elementary age students in a public school self-contained special ed program that focuses on social communication. So this is the right place for her. She also runs a 5th grade comic book club to facilitate knowledge and nurture of love of storytelling through sequential art. And also, besides working with the students, she's the author of soon-to-be-announced projects for Epic. I just read her Animal Rescue Friends, really good, gotta tell you. And when she's not writing, she's playing video games, reads, and serves as the director for literacy for reading with pictures, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting comics and education. So donate to her. And we also have, yes, it just keeps on coming. Sorry about that. Here we go. Kazu Kibuishi, and he's the creator of another one, #1 New York Times best-selling Amulet series, and it's available in 21 languages, so I think we can serve all of us here. And the final series, book series in that, the final book and the Amulet series, Wave Rider, goes on sale February 6th next year, so get your pre-orders in now. And he's actually living right now in San Antonio, so we're glad that you could make, the trip for that. And not least, and especially because his last name is my maiden name, is Rich Johnson, and he's the VP of Sales and Business Development for Diamond Books. So he's working with sales and marketing and business management efforts, and as well as like looking for new business opportunities. And he is a constant advocate and catalyst for graphic novels in the book trade, including introducing the comic arts to American readers of every age. He's written lots of articles on various aspects of the comics publishing business, and is the author also of Superman, Web Slinger, Hero and Icon, which is published by Rizzoli. I could talk longer, but we got to get these folks talking. So, again, we've got this thing of creating and promoting graphic novels for all readers in challenging times. So, why promote graphic novels during these challenging times? What's the big deal with them now? Yeah, right, sure, why not?
Well, to give a little more history of what I did, I was at DC Comics for about 10 years. Beginning in 1997, I was a VP of sales there. My job was to get books, graphic novels into bookstores and libraries where they never really existed before. And it was a challenge at first in librarians. A lot of librarians didn't think that comics belonged there, but that has changed over the last 20-odd years. I'm also co-founder of Yen Press, just to throw that out there. So I think in challenging times, it's always kind of challenging times. It is banning or trying to ban or challenge graphic novels is nothing new. We dealt with that 20 years ago when manga was coming out. I think the times right now, it's bigger than just what we do. I think there's a threat, an existential threat to all of writing and reading and what you should know and what knowledge you should have and what knowledge you shouldn't. So for me, this even goes beyond the book format of what you need to do to keep information flowing to people in this country, where it's not censored, where it's not banned, where it's not challenged, where it's free for anybody to read. And if you vote for me, I will. I'm kidding.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I came into comics, and it felt like things were it was like a ghost town at the time that I came into the scene in the early 2000s, actually. And so for me, I didn't even know what a graphic novel was when I started working on Amulet in 1997. And so for me, I just feel like, any challenge that comes our way is that's pretty normal. I try to look at the positive stuff. I think that graphic novels, especially for all ages, it's doing better than ever. I mean, the sales numbers are way up. And in fact, I think middle grade graphic novels outsells pretty much everything else, like in the bookstores. And I'm at bookstores one after another, and they always tell me the same thing, that all the kids are coming in, picking up Amulet, like it just never stops. And I heard that Amulet 1 had its best sales year, recently, and it's been out for 15 years. And it's a 15-year-old book, and so I don't know. I think that there is a lot of noise, that there's things are not going well, but I think that's really just an indicator that there's a lot of people in the room now. And so lots of arguments happen, and so you'll hear about more things, and more conflicts and stuff, and so it's just a more complicated space now.
Yeah, a little more overt than maybe in the past, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think open-mindedness and the closed-mindedness all kind of come in the kind of equal measure. So we're just gonna have to deal with it.
I find that comics and graphic novels are so important now more than ever because it is such an accessible form of communication. And I am a speech-language pathologist, so I work inherently with students who have disabilities. That's why they're on my caseload. So I do mean accessibility in that way, in terms of being able to get a story told to them without the gatekeeping of being able to decode. Because sounding out the words is different from understanding the story, is different from comprehending sequential art. So if they are struggling with decoding, they should not be deprived of these beautiful stories just because that particular skill set is not developed yet. And I work in public schools, and I will be the first to mention that there are so many needs that we are not able to met, and that is not fair to the students, because they're the ones that are ready for these stories and need these stories. So I do mean accessibility in that way, but I also mean for English language learners, people that do not necessarily have a disability, but just simply haven't been exposed to English, either, and I'm speaking very specifically of American comics right now and graphic novels, so being able to access those same stories. So I think that having that accessibility, and also with so much on the shelf, if a student picks up a book and flips through it, like a prose book, that's one thing. If they flip through a comic, they can make a judgment call a lot faster. Hey, this speaks to me. So just the sheer time factor of, I have a 20-minute block where my class has to pick out my library book, so that's something that they can do. And yes, we always talk about comics being a gateway to prose reading, but it shouldn't be the beginning. It shouldn't be a stepping stone. It's just something to convince them to try out reading, and it shouldn't go away once they are better decoders.
Rick, I think you want to add to it.
I guess one quick thing. I think one reason why graphic novels are being picked on particularly hard is because it's a visual medium. If you're a parent and you're walking by your children reading a prose book, you actually have to make an effort to read that book to find out what it's about. When it's visual, the parents make sort of a snap decision without really knowing what the book is about. They just see an image that offends them or think they offend them, and that's where I think why we're where we are today. It's a visual medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like that can also be a strength, I think, too, because it
Absolutely.
does. Yeah, it definitely helps parents. Like it gives them faster access to what the material might be, so that they can feel like they're screening. So I think a lot of this discomfort is just parents just don't have enough time, and they're kind of mad about it, and then they're kind of realizing, like graphic novels are actually helping them see what the kids actually are reading right now, and sometimes it surprises them. So I think that I think soon the shock will wear off, and then they'll start engaging with it more, and then I think it'll just kind of there'll be peace.
I've been writing or drawing characters since I was like in 5th grade. That's when my brain exploded. I knew I wanted to be a cartoonist. And I just write comics that I think are funny. And then when you get to a certain point, people say, oh, I love your kids' books. And I always thought, I'm not writing them for kids. I'm writing books that kids could read, because it's like when you watch Tom and Jerry cartoons, your parents love them, you love them. They were made for guys in the army and like for movie theaters. They were made for adults, prime time. But that's the way my humor's always been that way. So when I realize I make books for kids for read, but I get it over and over that I had a little girl and a little brother yesterday. They came to my table at the show, and they said, is Art Baltazar here? And I stood up, I'm like, yeah, that's me. And the one little girl instantly started crying. And I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, oh, they didn't know you'd be here, and they've been reading your books. And the dad told me, and even thanked me today, but he told me yesterday, my kids learn how to read by reading your books. They wouldn't want to read anything else, but comic books made them read. And I hear that a lot from parents with autistic kids or learning disability, all these different things that kids, that they diagnose their brains with, but comic books help them get through it. And the girl started crying, and then she hid behind her mom, and then her mom looked at me, and I said, hey, how you doing? She started crying. And then the boy, they said, we don't have this, because now I still make books. I've been making books for 30 years, and I publish my own books all year. If no one wants to publish it, I'll print. I'll find a printer. I'll bring it to the show. And so that was yesterday, and today they all came back because they were leaving today. Before they got on their flight, they came into the show and said they wanted to say goodbye. And so they're all looking at me real nervous. We just want to say goodbye. So I come from behind the table and I said, all right, group hug. I hug both kids like this. And then again, they walked away crying. I'm like, hey, what am I doing?
Happy tears.
But I hear that over and over about kids learning how to read by reading comics. Otherwise, they wouldn't pick up a book at all. So that's what I'm seeing. And it's rewarding to know that I'm making books that kids can read, but adults buy them, grandmas buy them, everyone buys them. It's like the Sunday newspaper. Remember those things? You read the comic strips on Sunday, and they lay on the floor, and you read them. Either your parents read them to you, or you just read them. But that's the way make comics like that. So, but it's rewarding to hear those kids.
Yeah.
You know,
The
that's
same
the
thing
best.
that
Yeah.
parents and teachers are concerned about not having as many words per page is the exact thing that allows a student to approach it if they're
Right.
intimidated
Yeah.
by a wall of text.
Yeah. When I
So if
would,
we let them lead,
Yeah.
they know what they're doing.
I would read Marvel Comics, the Avengers, and I hated when the character Vision, because he would talk in a robot voice, and his block would turn the whole, and I wouldn't even read, and I was like, get back to Captain America, and he's like, it's easier to follow what
Hope
he's
that
saying, or
wasn't
Peter Parker. I never liked when a Vision or a bad robot showed up, and like, man, he's a rogue. Or when they have narration, I would skip over that and go right to, well, what's Wolverine saying, you know, what's Superman saying, stuff like that. So, yeah, I get it.
Well, that's the nice thing is you have some options there,
Yeah.
right, with the dual
Yeah.
coding, absolutely. Do you folks want to tie in terms of why you think it's important to, promote graphic novels now?
Yeah, I work at public middle school where over 90% of my student body speaks English as second language. And we also have really high population of students who receive services. So graphic novel is really no intimidating way for them to start reading. However, like when we have the class visit and the teacher specifically directs them to just, okay, no books with pictures. You need to get the chapter books. You need to get the books with the, like however many word count. I was like, okay, what about, I'm not trying to undermine you, but about like give them the option of get at least something that they like, they choose by passion. So it could be graphic novels, it could be picture books, it could be. And most of the time it's graphic novels. And I wanted to give you a number. Amulet gets checked out a lot, and it's one of those comfort books for my students. And there's one 8th grade, I'm not gonna name her, but she kept on coming back. She has lots of problems, but she kept on coming back and checking out Amulet, one book at a time. And when she remembers, she renews the book. But it's usually like, 3 months late, whatever. She's always in trouble, always in trouble. But when she, finally makes it to school, she wanders into the library and then, oh yeah, I have to renew the book. Yeah. And so she does that. But just the last school year, 6 Amulet books, different volumes, went missing, weren't returned. I did the inventory and, they didn't come back. And I don't go after them. I have to mark them lost, but I don't go after them because they're in good hands. So yeah, just it's wrong to limit access to the graphic novels. If you really would like them to read the word-heavy novels, at least give them the chance to have the other book that's also passion-based choice.
And besides, Amulet is in chapters, so.
Yes, it definitely is, yes.
It's probably easier for you to reorder the book rather than chase down the kids.
Yeah.
Just get a new
Yes.
copy, that's all right.
And
Someone else can
if
steal
time
it.
is money, it's definitely cheaper.
Yeah,
That's true.
And Gina, want to tie in on the end?
Yeah, I can't say anything else than what you guys have already said. I'm just going to summarize, like, the word I'm taking away is access. Just
Yeah.
whatever the access point is. So I work very much with students that are not skilled readers and then multilingual learners, which you already touched on. And so we do have to lower that effective filter and give them access at any point. So I just really appreciate the authors here that are doing that. Thank you.
So building on that, and especially because, you've talked about students with, different languages and different experiences. So this is really for you creators. So how do you kind of factor in the idea of being as inclusive as possible when you're writing a graphic novel?
Well, when I started drawing comics professionally, before I started working on comics professionally, one of the reasons why I didn't go into the comics industry right out of high school, I was offered work right at high school, and I didn't go that direction because the books I read, I don't know that my grandma would understand. And she mostly speaks, I mean, she's not with us now, but when she was with us, and she would speak mostly Japanese, and she could read a little English, but I wanted her to enjoy it because, a lot of what I did was for my grandparents, and I wanted them to be proud of the work. So I moved away from superhero comics partly because I just thought I wouldn't share that with them. So when I'm working on Amulet, I'm constantly writing and drawing something that I know my grandma could look at and get it, and she can understand it on one level, then a slightly more advanced reader can understand it on another level, and then a very advanced reader might understand the nuances, all the things that I may be implying, where the poetry is in the book. That's for the more advanced readers. And so I'm thinking about everybody in that boat, and making sure that everybody has something to do. It's supposed to be a big family, it's a family activity really in my mind. And so because of that, I think that it's played really well in other fields I never thought of. English as a second language, dyslexic readers, just kids who just hate books, It just seems, because they can look at it and go, oh, well, I get it. I kind of want to know more. And then they read the words and they're like, whoa, there's like another level to this. I get they get into the puzzle of it,
yes.
And they start going into the book instead of just through the book. And so I'm always constantly thinking of it in that way as a device that just brings it's a machine, and it's not just information that just flows through like news or something.
Art, what do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
When I write stories, a lot of times I start with a character, and I like to write characters that anybody could relate to, no matter who they are, where they come from, boy, girl, whatever. And so I always start with a character who's always small, big head, small. Usually I don't draw noses, so they don't have a nose. I don't know. But then they always have, they're the small, vulnerable character that you follow through the story. And I always give them a little sidekick, like a little bird, a little wee kiwi, or like a squirrel or something that they could talk to. Because I remember when I was a kid watching those Spider-Man cartoons, Spider-Man would swing around the city and stand on a building, and he would start talking. But I'm like, who's he talking to? Like, there's no one even running. But I realized he's talking to me, I guess. But I always thought if I gotta have a vulnerable character, he needs a little sidekick. So I've always wrote stories like that where the main character is vulnerable because, like Luke Skywalker, the farm boy, he's vulnerable. Darth Vader could kill him, but he's still the hero. He got to go. So I've always had that. I saw that movie when I was 8 years old, and that's kind of what formed me. But that's always the way I make a hero. And even when I was making Tiny Titans, even the group of Tiny Titans is like, they're all different colors. You got Green Beast Boy, you got Cyborg and Robin, who are the only human kids. And I guess Raven's kind of gray, and then you got Starfire was orange. So I like that dynamic where, I'm not writing, because lately, there was one time I wrote a story, and I got accused of being culturally inappropriate. And I was so mad that whoever told me, I was working with, and I fired her, by the way. But I said, no, you're wrong. I'm not wrong. I've been doing this for years, and every kid's gonna identify to this character, even though I never lived on the island she's from. All right? And then, so I'm gonna tell you what it is. I got a book called Cora the Flora from Bora Bora. She's a little coconut girl, and she likes to paint. And she's on an island, Bora Bora. And so they told me, have you ever been to Bora Bora? My people are like, no. Well, how do you know what it's like? And I said, well, I've seen pictures. And you went, well, how can you write from there if you're not from there? I'm like, you mean the island paradise where Americans go and spend a lot of money to go on vacation in hotels and drink drinks on the beach? Well, yeah, that's what it is. And I said, so you're telling me I can only write stories about little boys who were raised on the south side of Chicago who like the White Sox? Is that what you're telling me? And she went, no, well, then stop talking to me. And then I got rid of it. I said, so what about all this? What about this cat character I created? Or like like this bug character or this little guy, I don't even know what he is, some alien guy. And so that's how I do it. I like if I have a cat, yellow cat wearing a red cape, every kid in the world could say, hey, I like Action Cat, I want to be like that. So that's where I come from. I don't know, I'm going on rant, but like that's where I come from, like strong, vulnerable characters who like bring you in and you're like, man, that's the hero, what's he gonna do? That's where I'm at.
So really what we're hearing is that you kind of provide a character, but then they can be as inclusive as they want to be
Yeah.
and interpret it as much as they want to be. That actually gives them more freedom.
Yeah, and I'm not writing for any particular type of kid. I'm writing, well, I had said earlier, I'm not writing for kids, but I'm writing for that one kid, any kid who's gonna read it and identify with, like, hey, that bug flies around, he can lift up a car, like, I wanna, that's what it is. Like, when you watch, that's why a lot of my characters not even human, most of them are not.
So only aliens can write about aliens.
Yeah, that's what
okay, now
that's
I
what I
got
was trying
that
to
clear
say.
now.
What about, core de flor is a coconut. Wait till I find out I'm not a coconut. I'm gonna get canceled on Twitter, like, what the heck? I don't get this.
There's a coconut inside
You
each
should look
of
at my
us.
sketchbook.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing in terms of inclusion, it can come from the character,
Yeah.
comes from stories that can be emblematic, and also I think you kind of alluded to it about, the families, so that you
Yeah.
can look at it different levels of reading, different ages, and that also brings back your issue of like the challenging times, and some people kind of like, some backlash on it. But as
Yeah.
you say, if the families are actually reading the comics with their kids, and teachers sharing it with their kids, they'd have a better appreciation. And then if kids, actually start creating them, they understand all the work that goes underneath it, in creating that. Absolutely.
There's a lot of feelings that you could put through a character, and it doesn't matter who the character is, but the way they look is, I don't know, even like monsters, like Beauty and the Beast, the giant beast, you find out he's scary at first, and then you find out he's actually cursed, and he ends up loving he captures the girl. I know there's deeper meaning, but he captures her and he ends up, they even fall in love. So like a lot of things change, and you can't base a book by its cover, but everyone does. You can't base character by what they look like, but people do. But unfortunately with comic books, everyone judges by the cover. It's like, nah, I'll take this one.
And sometimes the cover isn't exactly what's on the inside either.
Yeah,
as
right,
far as that
right,
goes.
exactly, yeah.
So, so we've looked at the creators, side. So those of you that are working, with young people, so how do you make sure that when you're promoting graphic novels, that you're as inclusive as possible?
Well, I think it depends on the book. You got me thinking about a book that actually I acquired when I was at Lion Forge that was sort of a specific audience, but also a general audience at the same time. It's a book called Lighter Than My Shadow. Has anybody ever heard of it?
Yeah.
It's a 520-page graphic memoir about a young woman when she was a teenager was anorexic. And when she went to get therapy, her therapist took advantage of her. I knew that there was an audience out there who had been anorexic. I know there are people out there who deal with friends, family members who have that issue. And as a matter of fact, when we published the book, we were very conscious of where we would sell it into. We actually sold it. It could have been in the adult section. We tried to promote it into the young adult section so more kids could read it who have that condition. We price pointed this huge 500-page book at $20.
Wow.
So we made it affordable for kids to read. And I had people come to me. I remember my daughter lent it to one of her friends, and whose sister was anorexic. She goes, I never understood what she went through until I read this, and now I can understand it better.
Exactly.
So it's really, the intent of the book and trying to find the audience for it. I always ask publishers and myself, like, paint me the picture of who's going to read this. Who is this book for? So it can be inclusive, but also can be kind of specific, too, depending on
Right.
the content.
Absolutely. Yeah, you kind of have your direct audience, but you have
Right,
your indirect
right.
audience as well, right? And then you have your unintended audience that can really benefit.
And sorry, real quick,
Good.
even a book like Mouse.
Yes.
You know, it could be for history buffs or people who read about the Holocaust, but there is a more universal aspect to it because of the issues that it confronts in that book.
Yep, absolutely.
In terms of inclusivity for creating comics, I tend to try to create characters that are represented incidentally. So I may create, so for example, in the next book I have, there is a non-binary person, but it's not about their journey being non-binary. I haven't lived that, I don't know about that. It's not about that, it's just about them volunteering at an animal rescue. Like remember the Star Wars movie with Benicio del Toro, and he stuttered, and that was never part of the plot. It just happened to be a person who stuttered. Like, I think that is fantastic representation, because it's not about, you know, an underdog story about getting over a stutter. It's not about how he persevered despite his stutter. It's not about how his stutter got him in more trouble. It's just a thing he happened to do. It's just a trait of it. So I am conscious of making characters that are different, not only from each other, but from me, but representing them in a way where it's just they're on an adventure. I wouldn't tell their story, but I'm telling a story and I'm making sure they're in it. And in terms of selling it to my students, promoting it, trying to get them to do it, they'll grab it right off the shelf. You mentioned not judging a book by its cover, but you kind of inherently do with comics and a quick flip. And I buy as many books as I can. First Book Marketplace, FB Marketplace, it's not Facebook, it's First Book. Firstbookmarketplace.org has incredibly affordable books. I'm talking like 80% off. And if you are from a Title I building, if you're in a public ed Title I building, FB Marketplace is a fantastic place to get that. And they have different categories, different parts from around the world. So like here are African stories, here's Asian Pacific Islander stories, here's all these different things. They have disability, they have neurodiversity, they have a by assumed age. But we write kids' books for everybody, but by recommended age or whatever. So FB Marketplace is a fantastic resource that can help find those things and at a really affordable price for educators and librarians.
I do want to just put in a note that Animal Rescue Friends is a really good example of really good story, about kids getting together and creating their own club, and helping out animals. And there's a real nice variety of, different kids' characteristics, et cetera, but it isn't like in your face. But, because they have these different backgrounds and gifts, they're able to then to really make a stronger team. And it's just a very nice, subtle, as you say about talking on different, reading in different levels. So, so kids can kind of pick and choose what really resonates for them.
Thank you.
Yeah. So promoting, being inclusive.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on what you were saying about the subtle way, like, this is not about LGBTQ, but, there's some character just happens to be, because just like in natural life, everybody is this and that. And I have a little bit of conundrum because, so middle school, 6th through 8th grade, the developmental level is so different. Like not every 6th grader is the same, not every, So I have the obligation to sort of alert, some of the books are young adult and some of the books maybe contain LGBTQ content. And I'm a little bit conflicted because when I put the rainbow sticker on the spine, and if the student was just curious and wanted to read about it, they get labeled or they get, picked on. And so I've been meaning to, which is really difficult as a library media technician at the public middle school, just taking care of the whole entire school all by myself, is that because I have to take care of the textbooks and then the Chromebooks and then the Wi-Fi hotspot along with all the library books and class visits and websites. So, I wanted to offer was the book covers. I'm from Japan, and when I buy books in bookstores in Tokyo, what they do is they just put the book cover, and we can be discreet when we are on the commuter train and just reading. They don't need to know what I'm reading. and actually that idea came from you too. You told me about the book cover. But,
Oh, I did.
but haven't been able to do. So like at the same time, I want to communicate to the audience, that to communicate to my patrons that these books have these contents for you. But at the same time, like I want to hide it too
Yeah,
for
that's
their
tough.
protection. I
Labels
know.
are helpful until they're not.
Right, exactly. So there's that. But yeah, the promoting as far as that goes, the spine label.
So I don't work with Yukiko anymore, unfortunately, but we used to be at the same middle school.
Yeah.
And something that would happen is that you're not just one thing. Like you're saying, like there's so
Right.
many intersection points.
Mm-hmm.
The school is overwhelmingly like socioeconomically at disadvantage. They have almost 30% sped. I've never heard that number. I work for a huge district now. So it's like I want to see myself, but myself is what? Let's go back to the classic, contains multitudes, right? So I think the awesome thing about inclusivity with graphic novels is that so much can be said by just showing. So my friend and I, she was telling me about Swim Team by Johnny Christmas, and just thinking and seeing like multiple Black characters, how they approached swimming. And that was all a visual language.
Right.
That was really impressive for her and was brought to my attention, like as a white person. Like, oh, I wouldn't have even thought of that. But there was caps, there were people not wearing caps, and that was just, it was not pointed out in the text. Johnny Christmas does not point it out. It's just a visual language and another access point for her, from her. So I think just having it visually on the page, seeing yourself represented, whatever self you're seeing.
Okay, great, thank you. So we've got some time left, and I want to make sure that you folks really are able to, like, what do you want to make sure that this audience hears about this whole topic of creating and promoting graphic novels for all readers in challenging times? What do you want to make sure that they hear? Okay,
I got one
Rich.
thing. I just want to give a reminder out there that it's not unusual for comics, the comics medium, to be attacked. I know this is a pretty young crowd here, but does anybody remember the book from the 1950s called The Seduction of
Oh,
the
yeah.
Innocent? That book
Which was bad research.
yeah, it was written by a psychiatrist named Dr. Wortham, who said if your children read if they read comics, because the word graphic novel wasn't out at the time. And by the way,
Yes.
when I first started talking about graphic novels, people thought I was talking about erotica, which was a little challenging on its own. They said if your kids read comic books, they're going to be juvenile delinquents.
Oh boy.
They're going to be trouble. And by the way, there are hidden secret images in comics that are dirty.
That's right.
And you have to watch out for that. It got so much attention that there were congressional hearings about the content of comics. Congressional hearings, which led to something called the Comics Code Authority of America.
Yep.
Who's heard of that?
Yes.
That was basically a body of comics book publishers trying to save their careers and their jobs in the medium, where they literally sanitized the books in order to get that little stamp of approval so that comic book could go on the newsstand, which is where primarily comics were sold. So it's not new.
Sorry.
What we just have to do is be vigilant and fight it. But even though now that some of the methods are a little bit squirrelier, I've heard of people going in and to get the book off the shelf, they'll just steal it.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of that? It's a little odd. So to promote them, we just have to keep doing what we do. We just have to keep up the good fight. And you're all here together. Go to your libraries. Donate. Talk to congressmen, local politicians to try to fight what's going on right now, because it really is about censorship and freedom.
And
Again,
there
I
is-
sound like I'm running for office, and I don't mean to sound like that.
And there is still the Comic Books Defense Fund, so
Yes.
donate to them. They're probably at this con.
They are.
Yeah, good, good. Yeah.
And I was always told, make the comic book you want. Make the comic book you want to make, and if people like it, they'll find you, and that's what I do. I just make them, put them on my website, and people find me, and when they come to my table, they said, I can't find your books in any stores. I said, they're not in stores. You gotta get them here. And so my friend, the DC Comics boss, he told me, just make what you want, and people, if they know it, you gotta let them know it exists, and they'll find it. And I've been that's a true statement for the last few years, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a social thing, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Kids tell each other about this stuff, that's a really good, PR.
Yep.
Give them opportunities to share, their love of graphic novels. What else?
If there's one thing everyone needs to know, it is that comics are a medium, not a genre.
Yes.
Yes.
So it is another way to tell a story. It is not a specific kind of content to story. I mean, you mentioned not doing superhero comics, but there's a lot of other kind of comics. I feel like that's that knee jerk of everything is capes and tights, and now we see a lot more diversity in terms of what types of stories are told, what genres within comics.
Yeah.
So I would say doing that, remembering it's a medium, not a genre, and to take the same care with it as parents, as teachers, as librarians, that you would in screening material for the movies that you stock, for the books that you stock. Like, do that. That way, if there is a challenge, make them name what is it in here. I will tell you right now that every book I was assigned growing up had a dog die in it, and that messed me up way more than seeing animal genitalia in mouse. Like that, like the horrible things that happen in prose that you can't just flip to, go under the radar. Whereas, like I said, you pop it open, you see a picture, and it's that much easier to say, no, that's bad, because of the context. You could have the same thing described in a book, and a parent that doesn't have the time to look through it, teachers that can't read every word aren't going to notice, aren't going to screen that.
I have dog superheroes, might help you.
Are they
you know?
okay? They're
Yeah,
okay?
they're good, they save the day. You can
Okay.
read it and you feel good.
I would love that. Thank
Especially
you.
before you go to sleep.
Work through all that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
appreciate it.
I always have to watch Ryan Seacrest after a scary movie before I go to bed.
Mine is Little Mermaid.
he-
That's my
yeah,
palette.
'cause
You don't
he
find
erases-
that, you don't find that
erases
scary in
it all.
itself?
Taking a remote. Ryan Seacrest, Kardashian? No, where's Ryan Crazy?
We do know how to flip pages, we do know how to scroll past stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And actually,
that's a good
before we
point.
leave, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, someone told me recently I'm opinionated, and that is certainly true. I do want, some of us here are behind the scenes, the people who write, the people who sell, the people who market, but those of you who are librarians and retailers who are on the front lines, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to interrupt and ask, so how many here are librarians? All right. How many are librarian wannabes? Okay.
That's awesome.
How many like librarians?
Oh, yeah.
Yay. Woo. How many like graphic novels? Yay. All right, so it's our people. Yay, team. Yay.
We're
By,
on the
by the
right
way,
spot.
I want to say, do thank a librarian. They're not in this job for the money or the glamour, just got to tell you. So things doesn't cost anything except a couple of seconds. Okay, so continuing on.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, that's why I go to these library shows, the ALA shows and stuff, and just go there to sign and, just talk to people and talk to librarians. And what I love about it is, everyone I talk to, the difference between a Comic-Con or a librarian show is that the room is full, and all the librarians are looking, and they're all paying attention. Even if they don't want to read your book, they know someone who will. But at Comic-Con, you do a panel and there's people just falling asleep and they're eating or they don't care. They just want somewhere to sit. But I learned that from librarians. It feels so good to know that whatever we're making, they're like, yeah, we'll try that in the library, whatever. And that's the whole key is you got to get your book in the library. I used to, years ago when I was trying to do this stuff, I found out that if I left my book at Barnes & Noble or Borders bookstore, they would reorder it when they sell that copy. Because I bought barcodes and put them on my book, and I printed trade paperbacks, and I drove everywhere in Chicago, everywhere I went. After this, I said, let's go find Barnes & Noble, and I put the book on their shelf. And because they scan it and it's not in their computer, so I'm like, what the heck? And they got to enter it, Patrick the Wolf Boy 9004, and then they type it all up, and then I would get an order. Now, 3 months later, when they sell it, they automatically order 5 copies. So I would ship my book all over the place, and that's how we got into bookstores. We went, that's what we did, and that's true. We really did that. And I told that story to the DC Comics publisher, That's why Tiny Titans got approved, because I told him that. He goes, "You really want to make comics?" I'm like, "Yeah, man. If you don't hire me, I'm gonna make them
I'm
anyway."
gonna do it anyway.
Oh, yeah, by the way, graphic novelists, comic artists do not go into the job in order to be really rich and
Yeah.
to have really a lot of glamour.
got-
So
yeah.
much hard work.
You might need 5 roommates. You might have to sell your car to pay your rent. That's gonna happen. Yeah. Oh, allegedly. Yeah. There's always a guy on my couch somewhere. Who are you, dude? You owe me $100 this month. What? And then he leave. I'm sorry. I'm taking over.
That's why people need to know this,
Yeah,
right?
it is. You struggle.
It is a struggle. So Yukiko, what do you want to make sure everybody gets?
Librarians are kind and friendly. So people tend to choose to work in a library because we want to help. We want to connect people to the materials. And so I try to keep in mind that even if I'm not particularly interested in NFL or, certain kind of sports things, I still be mindful to purchase those materials because I know somebody else is just like you just
somebody
mentioned.
else wants it.
Yeah, so librarians are not scary. So approach them and ask them questions. And if they don't know the answer, then they will look them up and then later follow up and help you. If you don't want your parents or if you don't want your friends to know what you're reading, I think it's safe to put the cover on and read it. When you return, just take it off so that they can scan. Those
When they
things.
ask you at the grocery, paper or plastics, I'll take paper.
There you go.
So you can wrap up your books.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That's what we used to do. First grade.
Yeah.
Then I would draw on them all.
That's
my own
what
book.
started it.
Yeah.
And Gina?
So where we started was talking about challenging times and how parents might see something in what their child is reading and be concerned and voice it, and then that's kind of what set off this national conversation. But it works the opposite way too. So if you see something that you want to promote, please make that heard at at a site level, at a district level. Moving from the classroom to a position at the district office, in my classroom, Yukiko and I would just buy whatever we wanted with our own money and put it in there. And when the kids told us what they wanted, we're like, yeah, sure, we'll get that.
Right.
At the district, there's a lot more hoops to jump through, and I can't emphasize enough how much parent voice and community voice affects the people at the top's decisions. So if there's power to take them away, there's power to put them back on the shelves. So please advocate for that.
There we go. And that kind of brings the point that, library programming just like this, having, meetings at schools and having, graphic artists, basically talk about their process and what the benefits are so that we are kind of open about it and that, the more the kids, again, graphic novels are a great gateway to other kinds of reading, and I really appreciate that, Jane talks about sequential art and that it is a unique medium, and it's actually very sophisticated because it requires visual literacy as well as, handwritten or orthographic literacy, and being able then to actually, in another panel we talked about this, the reader is actually, a viewer, an audience is co-creating that story because in between each panel, they have to have their own imagination. So bringing that point of, the importance of dual coding, but that you are in a way being bilingual in 2 different kinds of literacies. So that in itself, and again, graphic novels can do things that no other medium can do. So the more that we,
I often use comics and graphic novels when I'm working on inference with my students because it lowers that decoding bar, but it still lets them practice the underlying skill.
Exactly.
And so, like you said, co-creating what happens in between, and sometimes I'll chop up individual panels in a comic script and have them put them in order. It's not always the same, but if you can justify one step to another, we're calling it good enough. I've had hilarious reimaginings of
yeah.
Calvin and Hobbes based on what order kids put
Yeah.
the panels in. And fine, tell me the story. Why was he there and back again? I'm like, sometimes it kind of works better.
Yeah.
So,
So in these
Years-
challenging times, we need to be more literate than ever. And
Years
Rich?
ago, I heard of a study done in Indiana, I think at the University of Indiana, with a local high school where they gave kids money to go out and buy graphic novels. They could pick what they wanted, and it was really a reading level experiment. What was their reading level before they started reading comics, and what was the reading level after? And one kid said, when I used to read regular books, prose, I couldn't see the movie in my head.
Exactly.
But after I read comics and I went back to other
Yeah.
books, I can now see the movie in my head.
Which is one of the main problems that kids who don't read, it's because they don't know
Yeah.
how to do that visual thing.
and some neurodivergent minds have what's called aphantasia, where they can't picture something.
Right.
as they read it.
Exactly.
It's just how it is. So it's it's another accessibility tool.
That's right.
And I always see movies in my head. It doesn't stop.
And the one other thing that I would think of is that while we talk about graphic novels, it's really comic art. Because as you say, you have Mouse, you have Persephone, you've got, the history of the gold rush, so many nonfiction, things, and you go to different cultures and they have graphic novels on how to do advanced mathematics. So
Oh,
again,
Japan,
I think-
France, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, people need to just be more knowledgeable about that, be more exploratory about it, and especially in these challenging times where we kind of like sometimes close in, we need to open up even more.
I guess
So
I-
with
oh,
that,
all right.
yes,
No,
please,
no,
last
I
word.
because I feel bad because I didn't say anything. so I'll add to it then. One thing I don't feel that we're gonna have to push graphic novels. I guess is the way I'm gonna put it.
Yeah.
I don't. The readers are coming.
Yes,
There's just gonna be a flood of them because we are in a time where information is moving at such a pace that the kids just need something to lean on, and comics can give them that respite.
absolutely.
So we don't have to push it. We're not. We're the ones creating like life rafts and like life jackets and stuff. So if you're basically preparing for that, you don't want to have to sell a lot of that. So you just want to make a lot that are really good and sturdy that they can lean on when the time comes. And when if we're all ready for that, then that's great. And if you're not, then it's gonna get pretty messy, like it's been messy for the last several months. So, or a year. So I don't think we need to be evangelists for it. We're just gonna have to get ready for an influx of people who need the information to move through their lives.
Absolutely. And maybe they'll go and create their own graphic novels, right?
Yeah, they're gonna
Yes.
want to. Yeah, there's gonna
Yeah,
be tons.
continue the
Yeah,
process.
I have a 5th grade comic book club, and the end of the year, the final project is always an anthology of all their work. We have a book release party. We have the teachers come in and sign it, or our teachers come in and get all of the creators to sign it. I always make them sign mine first. One of them is gonna go big, and I'm gonna be able to sell that and retire. But I do have them do that as a final project. I say, you've been hired to do this. This is your final project. They get it signed. It's a big party. We had to do a second print run. Like I had to run to the printer a second time to make a new batch of it, and that was very thrilling. I'm like, we sold out of the first set. We had to make people go on a wait list. Like it was a big deal. And if at 5th grade they're starting to get to that age where they start. I was just talking to Kazu about this. They start to get critical of their art instead of just like in kindergarten, it's everything I make's great. As they get older, they get more critical, but they're comparing themselves to professionals. So I want to really build in a really empowering situation right at the cusp of that going into middle school, where you're going to get that just wide range of skills that they are going to be the people we buy from soon.
So know that signing is going to be, speaking of signing, is going to be right outside that door. Ask them on how to, contact them. Couple of logistics. Bathrooms are over there. Please use the elevator, not the escalator, because it isn't going to work and you're going to be stuck. Want to thank the National Book Council, their Graphic Novels Committee for sponsoring it. Want to point out the American Library Association has a graphic novels roundtable, their recent ALA's book list, special guide to graphic novels in libraries, and this month is Graphic Novels in Libraries Month. And while we should have graphic novels in libraries every month, let's celebrate. So thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Thank you, publishers, for having these folks here. Thank you, folks, for coming here, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right.